But have to start off today with Kevin Durant and the Brooklyn Nets. Kevin Durant led the Brooklyn Nets back. Huge comeback to a 114-108 win last night over the Milwaukee Bucks in Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Semifinals. But let me say this, the final score does not reflect the actual game, right? We talk about how often you can't tell a book by its cover, right? And if you just were to look at the stats in the box score from yesterday's game, well, it's easy to come to one conclusion. And I will react to that conclusion in a second. But oftentimes, again, it doesn't tell the whole story by just looking at the stats. You don't understand the ebbs and the flows of the game. But here's the first big takeaway. Just like many of you, Kevin Durant was absolutely out of this world. He was otherworldly last night. This might have been the greatest performance of Kevin Durant's career. This might have been the greatest game that I've ever watched Kevin Durant play. The only other games that somewhat rival that performance, given the adversity and the situational adversity that Kevin Durant was dealing with last night, the only other games that somewhat rival that was Game 6 against the Clippers 2 years ago. I think in 2019 when he drops 51 points on Pat Bev and Lou Williams in Game 6 in the closeout game against the Clippers at Staples Center. And then that double overtime win when he was a member of the Oklahoma City Thunder and they beat the Toronto Raptors on the road. As far as single performances, obviously Durant in the finals was sensational, but for what he was being asked to do, those are the only two games that even rival that performance that Kevin Durant put out last night. 49 points, 17 rebounds, 10 assists, efficient, 16 of 23 shooting, 4 for 9 from the three-point line, 13 of 16 from the free throw line. He finally got to the free throw line last night, and he played in all 48 minutes. I understand when players tell their coaches, hey, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to win. He approached Steve Nash and said, during stretches of the first quarter when they were trailing by double digits, hey, if you need me to play a little longer, I can. Yeah, a little longer. I didn't necessarily think that would imply the entire game. He plays 48 minutes. And so this was listening to Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. This was an absolute symphony, a virtuoso performance. It was just a beautiful and sensational game for a guy that's had to overcome so much, and I'll touch on that in a moment. But you couple that with the fact that he really, outside of Jeff Green, who was the unsung hero, he was the Robin last night, 27 points, 7 for 8 from the three-point line. Blake Griffin was the butler, Alfred, 2 Batman for Kevin Durant, chipping in 17 points on 3 three-pointers. James Harden was non-existent. He and Joe Harris were anemic on offense. James Harden, I understand, was coming back prematurely from a hamstring issue. He goes 1 for 10. Goes 1 for 10, 0 for 8 from the three-point line. He did have 8 assists. Joe Harris was 1 for 7 from the three-point line, 2 for 11 from the floor. Now, how James Harden even was out there on the floor baffles me. I'm still perplexed at how he all of a sudden got upgraded from Monday night. He's definitely out for Game 5 and kind of out indefinitely. Then Tuesday morning, he's upgraded to doubtful. And then from doubtful, all of a sudden, yep, I'm 100% good to go and I'm ready to play. I was concerned that this was going to be an Anthony Davis Part 2 situation in Brooklyn where he plays 5-10 minutes just to show face, just to try and inspire and provide some morale to the team, and then he takes a seat and re-aggravates it somehow or just can't deal with the pain threshold. But he stays in there, and he's a complete non-factor. If anything, he may have been an impediment to this team and may have hampered their team's chances had the Bucks decided to exploit that, which they did not. But then this leads to the other aspect for Durant, which is the adversity that this guy had to deal with, given the fact that he ruptured his Achilles just 2 years ago, missed 2 seasons, or the equivalent of 2 seasons. And this is the first time in about 5, 6 years that you're asked to truly carry the load and carry the mantle. This isn't to discount or discredit his previous great performances or highlight the fact that other guys have had to do that for longer stretches of his career, but it is to highlight the fact that we hadn't been accustomed to seeing Kevin Durant being tasked with that much responsibility in the past, and he played his best performance of his career. He absolutely stepped up, and again, when you factor in the injury adversity that he was trying to overcome, it's nothing short of spectacular. But at the same time, as great as Kevin Durant was, what this game did, this game personified greatness and personified the utmost idiocracy all in the same game. Because as great as Kevin Durant was, that might have been one of the most dumbfounding performances by the Milwaukee Bucks. That was an utter calamity and disaster. The Milwaukee Bucks should be charged with aiding and abetting that performance and that comeback, because that game should not have been that close. They should have blown out the Brooklyn Nets by over 20 points. They led by 16 at the half, but their style of play, what were they thinking? Why were they jacking up so many threes? I understand that, again, if you look at the stats, sure, they shot at 41% from the three-point line, but they were torching the Nets inside. No one could defend the Milwaukee Bucks on the interior, and instead, you're sending Brook Lopez out to the three-pointer to all of a sudden become J.J. Redick. I understand Brook Lopez can hit a three-point shot, but that's not his game. Or if it is, that shouldn't be your strategy if you're Mike Budenholzer. That's one thing. Why are you jacking up so many threes when you're stifling the momentum? And really, it allowed the Brooklyn Nets to re-enter the game, to find their rhythm. And if you're Giannis, first of all, you have to hold on to that basketball. Chris Middleton, and he acknowledged it. Chris Middleton found him for a perfect dunk that he just dropped. He let it slip through his hands. But then, if you're Giannis, you're the reigning defensive player of the year. How do you not take that assignment to guard Kevin Durant? I understand in retrospect, he says in the postgame, yes, I would like to guard him. I would like to take on that challenge. But where was that in the moment? Because clearly in the moment, you didn't want to guard him. You're the reigning defensive player of the year, a two-time MVP. You need to be the one to say, the hell with what Coach Bud thinks. I'm going to defend this guy, because that was the other piece. If you're Coach Budenholzer, why would you let Kevin Durant go ISO and play one-on-one the entire game? They did not double him a single time in the ballgame, and he drops 49. Did they not see what Luka Doncic did against the Clippers with the Mavericks earlier in the first round? He nearly single-handedly won the Mavericks the series by going one-on-one, by the Clippers not doubling him. You have to force the other guys to beat you. You have to force the Landry Shamits, the Jeff Greens, the Blake Griffins, the Bruce Browns of the world to make three-point shots. And again, given the fact that James Harden could barely move, he literally was just standing there. James Harden was there in body and in spirit only. He was not there or contributing at all. So you don't take advantage of him on the defensive side, and you let Durant go one-on-one. It was just not an intelligent strategy employed by the Bucks. You know, coming into this game, the only thing that the Nets have is Durant. You know that's the game plan. You know the offense is going to run through him. Take the ball out of his hands. If Joe Harris beats you, Jeff Green beats you, Landry Shamet beats you, you chalk it up to a great performance from the role players. But we've seen Kevin Durant beat teams individually. So I just don't understand what they were even thinking. And the other piece of it is, again, even though Kyrie Irving didn't play in this game, I still think that if Kyrie doesn't play and James Harden is hampered offensively, the Bucks can win this series, and they should have won this game. They should have been going back to Milwaukee to Pfizer Forum with an opportunity to close them out in 6 games. But now they'll probably win game 6. I don't know if they're going to win a game 7 in Brooklyn. I just don't see it happening. And then I also don't like Giannis praising Durant after the game, calling him the best player in the world. Save all the flattery and the adulation for after the series. If you want to compliment a guy, that's fine, but hold on to it for after the series, not when you're still in the heat of the battle. So Milwaukee Bucks blew this game. I mean, Durant, I don't want to take away from Durant's performance. He was absolutely sensational, but at the same time, the Milwaukee Bucks had this game in the bag, and they let one of the all-time greats go off for one of the all-time great performances, and they had something to do with it. It wasn't just he was well defended, they were guarding everyone, and he just pulled up and beat you. He did that, but you didn't change any of the strategies. And so now they're going to have to look at that, and that game right there may have just cost them an NBA championship, the Milwaukee Bucks. It may have just done that.